Welcome everyone back to Tripadvisor Talk, a weekly discussion show in which we will connect with leaders from the travel sector to talk about what's happening, how and when we can start traveling again, and the changing face of our industry in light of recent events. Today's session discusses creative in a crisis and asks the topic, how have different travel brands and creative agencies managed to engage with consumers in light of COVID-19? My name is David Vu, and I'm really excited to introduce my guests today. This week, we've assembled some of the best creative minds and thought leaders from not just the travel industry, but from the marketing space in general. First off, we have Janine Bravosier, who founded The Crew in 2010 after identifying a gap in the market for a full-service communications and media agency, specializing in the premium food, drink, and hospitality industry. With more than 14 years of experience in media and communications, Janine has established The Crew as a respected and recognized communications agency. Next up, we have Vivian Gunn, who is the Vice President of Public Relations at the Langham Hospitality Group. In her role, she's responsible for all public relations matters pertaining to the hotel group, including publicizing the corporate brand messages, handling crisis communications and media training, and enhancing the profiles of the group's portfolio of brands. She's also a little bit sleep deprived because Langham is currently in the midst of a 24-hour live stream. So, thank you so much, Vivian, for taking a break from the live stream to be with us today. We have Andy Grant, the Executive Creative Director for TWA Singapore, who's a Scottish South African hybrid who has lived and worked around the world from Johannesburg to Prague, London, Singapore, Hong Kong, New York, and Los Angeles. He's worked in some of the world's top creative agencies, and his global relaunch work for Turkish Airlines is currently the most viewed brand film online in history, with over 151 million views. And for those who haven't seen it yet, it's the film starring Lionel Messi and Kobe Bryant, which also won the YouTube Ad of the Decade award. We have Akira Mitsumasu, who's the VP of Global Marketing at Japan Airlines. He brings over 30 years of experience in the aviation industry and has held multiple leadership roles within the company, including his previous role as VP of Product and Services. He's been named one of Asia's best marketers and is recognized as one of the 50 most influential global marketing leaders. Finally, but not least, we have Nicholas Yee, the founder of the Secret Little Agency in Singapore and chairman of Mother Shanghai. Over a decade ago, he founded the Secret Little Agency in a 3-bedroom apartment shared with some of his friends. Today, the agency remains the only independent agency in Singapore to be crowned Creative Agency of the Year multiple times. TSLA is also the newest addition to the Mother family in London, New York, Los Angeles, and Shanghai, with a combined client roster that includes the likes of IKEA, Deliveroo, Stella Artois, and Tripadvisor. So thank you everyone again so much for your time. So excited to get this discussion underway, and we'll just get straight into it. I think the first topic that we have, restrictions ultimately put all of your existing marketing plans for the year on hold. What sort of message did your brand or your clients have to rush out to your consumers in the immediate aftermath of the wider spread travel restrictions being put in place? And I might get Nicholas to lead us off.
Yeah, that question's quite meta because I think there's our brand, which is the agency brand, and then obviously there's our clients' brands, which we service and we partner. For our brand, it is really kind of re-evaluating the role of creativity to solve like problems, and this is a huge challenge, right? It's a huge challenge that the world has kind of never seen before. Not on this scale. So it's almost like, can creativity really deal with a problem on such a big kind of cultural and social and kind of economical scale, you know? So a lot of what we were doing with our clients, and, you know, I'm a fanboy of creativity. I believe it can do amazing things. I believe it can do impossible things. You know, we were telling our clients that, they needed a huge injection of that, you know, an even bigger injection of that, an urgent injection of that. Because I think the immediate tendency is to kind of be quite defensive and to kind of shell in a little bit and be quite protective. But I think a lot of it's really about finding your balance as a brand, whether you're a travel or hospitality brand, it's finding your balance, kind of really understanding what you stand for, and then using kind of creativity, kind of bring that to the forefront, you know, so that you're reminding people not just what you did before COVID, but like what you stand for, you know. And I think there's a huge opportunity for creativity to do that, and then I think on a much more human side, not speaking as a marketeer or like as an agency lead, I think we're supposed to bring smiles and delight and joy, in a time of pain and duress that the world's going through. So a lot of what we've been working with Tripadvisor, working with some of the hospitality brands at like Banyan Tree, Citizen M. A lot of this is really about kind of trying to bring joy to the forefront again, even though we can't physically be together. So I think that's broadly what we've been doing, and both on the agency side as well as trying to kind of project that optimism and that joy, with our clients as well.
Yep, Janine, you can go ahead.
Just spilled some water.
Yeah, I think, as Nicholas said, I think creativity played a really big part in a lot of the way we were encouraging our clients to respond. I mean, the initial part was all of the, immediate sort of housekeeping stuff in a way, acknowledging the severity, company policies, making sure compliance, all of that stuff, which ended up becoming quite a bit white noise, I think, because every brand felt the need to do it. Every business was saying much the same thing because all they could do is basically be in agreements of government and what everyone else was doing, and no one wanted to stand out. And I think then the second phase was really connecting or reconnecting with the customer and their existing audience. Some to actually connect directly to say how they could help, and also kind of bring them even more into their community. I think a lot of people were really eager to help brands that they love, travel brands and hospitality brands, whether that was through simple things like saying postponing rather than cancelling trips or bookings, assisting with fundraising or buying vouchers, all of these kinds of things, these very sort of tactical, very sort of real and quick sort of real-time responses. And then I think the final phase in response has really been sort of sitting back a bit and thinking, how do we want our brand to be not just remembered during this time, but how do we want to come out of this? And I think there's been a lot of opportunity. People have felt that opportunity personally to reflect on what they believe in, let alone, what they want their brands of choice to believe in. So there's been a real opportunity for brands to kind of reshape and to think what really matters to us, what's important. No idea is a bad idea, to be honest. We've seen a lot of interesting, fast, kind of experimental responses from our clients, which we've really encouraged. I think people have been very forgiving and open during this time. So it's been a real opportunity to allow a brand personality to shine through a bit and sort of have a less perfect, if you like, response in many ways. There's been a lot more communication and content from some brands that I think would otherwise have been overthought or, really overworked through agency processes or internal processes, whatever it might be, that's had to be much more immediate. And I think so we've seen a real sense in some ways of playfulness and fun and a bit more interest, which we've really been encouraging from our brands. It's made them much more human.
Yeah, there's just to add to, there's been so many phases, right? We've gone through so many different parts in this journey. And I think, when it first started, I think we kind of, with our brands, we kind of kicked into help and add value. Those were kind of the key drivers. And it was incredible to see, Singapore Airlines kicked into, okay, help. So how do we get people, Singaporeans, back to Singapore in the immediate kind of situation? And then how do we add value? So, I mean, not being able to be in the skies and being on the ground, it was an incredible act to see them take, the crew and put them as first responders on the kind of front lines and help. And I think so that kind of show and those types of acts from brands have been incredible, and really inspiring to see how, brand can pivot and still stick to its core DNA of what it's about, but just add value in a different way. I think kind of acts like that have been really inspiring to see.
I think for us in the hospitality industry, you're right. I mean, you start with the phases, and I think for us, the difficulty, the challenge was that we have 23 hotels around the world. So when the pandemic struck, of course, it was in China first. And then the rest of the world was just kind of like, going about its own way. And I remember our hotels one by one started closing down in China. And then you got to write messages for it because it was just unprecedented. So that was just nonstop. And they're just not closing down. But then, before they actually close down, it's like, do you do the temperature checks? Do you clean? What's going on? And actually, nobody knew what was going on. So that was just so for us right then and there, our messaging was just really bread and butter issues. That's just like the bare bones. You take care of your guests, you take care of your employees. That's the messaging that's going out. It's nothing fancy, just kind of like trying to get a grip on things. And then we found out there's no one messaging that fits all. And we found that out like in late February, early March, when it started kind of like creeping out to North America and to the Pacific. We have hotels in Melbourne, Sydney, and Auckland. And then the UK, and of course North America and UK were, kind of like the last to kind of like get with the program. And I remember having calls with my American team saying, can you just learn what we did in terms of messaging, what you're going to tell the guests? How about health declaration forms, temperature checks? And they got, my God, there's privacy issues. We don't want to be sued. We went 20 rounds with that. So yeah, the messaging wasn't just kind of like, even though I'm in-house and we have a little bit more control saying like, do it, but still it was just really, really tough to get a handle on it until about end of March when they just kind of like thought, okay, this is happening. And then but you know what, even now in June, I had to just come up with, like a health hygiene statement for all hotels because they're starting to open up again. The banks are coming back. The big corporate clients are coming back, like the Morgan Stanley. And they have kind of like a little bit of a duty to their clients to say, what are your cleanliness protocols, let's say. I can't even like get all my hotels to agree on something like that. So we're still in this whole bread and butter issue about our messaging. And that is really, really tough. Cancellation policy is one thing, and then now you've gotten into, what if a guest gets infected? What if a staff member gets infected, and all sorts of things. So we're pretty much still in that first phase, but as David mentioned earlier, we have a live stream going on, so we still have some positivity message coming up. Like Nicholas, you were talking about that because that's really, really important, especially with us in the hospitality industry.
Vivian, what's your life? Sorry.
I was just saying that I share a lot of what you've just mentioned.
I can imagine.
Yes, managing this massive amount of operation-wise very daunting challenges that we have to sort because with all the borders closed, lockdown, we had to cancel a lot of flights. So how do we actually bring people home? We had to organize a lot of repatriation flights. There's also a challenge in terms of moving medical supplies using our cargo flights, and we don't have enough space. We use our cabin as well, the head rack, and then all the seats just to make sure that the medical supplies get transported smoothly, because you can easily imagine with so many flights being cancelled, it's a really huge shortage of cargo space. So we utilize space to do that. So just to reiterate what was mentioned early on, to really be helpful, whilst at the same time managing all the operation challenge was really a huge daunting task, especially at the initial phase. But I think in terms of messaging, there are many things that we sort of worked as we go along. So yes, initially it does sound like people are sort of saying the same things, repeating one after another. But I think in a sense that's really very important when we come to think of it now, because we need those voices. We need to have a shared mutual understanding of what is good for our societies. So instead of having voice of people talking about a zero-sum game of me getting what I need, so we actually hear a lot of people sharing a lot of altruism, a lot of kind acts, and I think it's these voices, even though they sound very much alike, that builds up a stronger belief that we can actually, as a human race, do a lot together. And I think that was one thing that was good that came out of COVID-19, was that we came to recognize these shared norms. But then, yes, it also helped us rethink what is important. And in our case, it's, as I mentioned early on, it's really like hearing what people are saying, learning what the pain points are. So back in end of March and April, when we learned that many people had to cancel their trips to Japan, and they've been really looking forward to see the sakura cherry blossoms in Japan. So we thought, well, if they can't come over, well, why don't we bring sakura over? So we created videos to show the sakura in various parts of Japan. We also work very close with Tripadvisor and use a lot of footages that we have. And for example, for people who are really, really stressed after months of lockdown, we played videos on mindfulness. We actually have a checklist to help you tick the boxes on how to practice mindfulness. We have breathing exercises whilst watching wonderful sceneries of Okinawa. So it's a lot of listening, I would say, listening to what people are saying, this understanding the sentiment to what they're going through, and trying to be responsive in all that. Obviously, throughout this whole period, the healthcare services, they were really our heroes. So we also worked on sending messages just to say a big thank you to all these people who are making huge sacrifices, working really, really long hours just to help the maintaining the healthcare services. So we aggregated messages from across the world from all our staffs, just to say a big thank you. So a lot of things, it's really looking at what's happening and trying to be responsive at the same time.
Andy, you had something for Vivian, I believe.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask what the 24-hour live stream was.
Oh my God. Actually, this was the phase 2 of what Nicholas was talking about, getting all positive and making people happy. So you must have seen from other hotel companies and restaurants, all those cooking videos. I think someone told me that the most Googled item at one point was how to make banana bread. So we have no shortage of chefs and bartenders. So it was like cocktails and bread and cake and scones making all over the place. And then I thought, okay, you know what? It was a little bit random because our hotels were all doing it at their own time, at their own markets. I said, let's just kind of like pull together all your content for one day. And it just so happened yesterday was the 155th anniversary of the Langham hotels. And then we thought, okay, let's just do this. We can't have a massive party, but let's have it online. So we got 17 Langham hotels around the world to get us content live and pre-recorded. It started at noontime, Hong Kong, Singapore time, and it just ended a couple of hours ago. So it's a little bit zonked. And so some of it was live from New York and Chicago, London, Sydney, and it was like musicians. There were harpists, there were chefs, there were etiquette lessons for children. I mean, it was just all over the place. It was like a Lollapalooza. And it was kind of random, but it was kind of delightful in some way. It's definitely amateurish, but then that was actually the appeal of it because, people, we found out through all the comments, they didn't really appreciate the slick, kind of corporate-y type of videos we used to have. But so it was really kind of fun and to see how it was done. We put it on Restream, and then it was also restreamed on Facebook. So yeah, it just ended, and it was just a really good experiment. I'm not going to do that again.
Definitely outsource your next 24-hour stream.
I
Vivian.
will.
I think that brings us, I mean, the next topic I wanted to talk about, and Vivian just put a great example of that. I mean, marketing budgets, as we know, tend to be one of the first things that tend to go when any economic hardships come into place. How have we all sort of addressed the inevitable cut in marketing budgets, and how we sort of found ways around it using owned and operated channels, live streams like that? I might, Janine, I might start with you on this particular one.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think as an agency, you feel that quite quickly. You definitely are frequently the first cut when marketing budgets go. So we've had to be obviously very clever in terms of what we've encouraged our clients, where we've encouraged them to spend their really limited budgets, or to convince them to keep us on to assist them during this time in connecting with their audience. I think, generally the briefs have been much shorter campaigns, much more targeted. They've been looking to maximize sort of own channels, and also trying to broaden audiences as much as they can, without trying anything too extreme. But we've had clients do really clever things. We work with Melbourne Food and Wine Festival, who, well, they were postponed 2 days before the festival was due to start. So they literally had talent almost on planes flying in, but they kind of repurposed that talent to create an online festival that was obviously very low budget to no budget in some instances. Rene Redzepi live streamed from his lounge room. So I guess what I think has come out of these reduced budgets is a real understanding that sometimes we don't necessarily need those bigger budgets. In some instances, there's been a lot of very clever marketing that's come out of it, a lot of more very real content, quite raw content, things that, have listened to the popular opinion and repurposed, consumer content as well. I think that's been really key, is to take what's being created already or what's being done, and again, not try to make it too perfect. Get it out there. Make sure it engages with what the public and your consumer is actually interested in already and wants to hear or needs to hear, and not overthinking it too much. So I think in some way, that these really retracted budgets have been interesting. Small agencies like ours are quite used to dealing with quite tight budgets, and certainly, an industry like hospitality frequently runs on quite low, tight margins. So it's not something we're necessarily not accustomed to dealing with. It's a common issue, I guess, but it's really, I think it's allowed a lot of brands to do things that are a bit more interesting, a bit more real, and maybe a little less flashy.
Nicholas, I know your team almost in the immediate aftermath released a bunch of great content which was sitting on owned and operated, especially for your travel partners. Maybe you could go through some of that from on your side as well.
I think the limitations, budget limitations, time limitations, always force creativity out, and forces, and a bit cliche, but it forces innovation to happen. I think that act of rebalancing, which I think COVID forced everyone to kind of do, brands, marketeers, clients. We encourage so many of our clients to kind of move from the what you're selling to the why you're selling it. So, it's almost like and I think as Janine said, like there's a lot more spontaneity in wanting to create content and a lot more, and I mean this in the best of ways, like shooting from the hip, to get something that is true to the brand, knee-jerk true to a brand out, and some clients had a bit of an existential issue because it was like, who am I? Like what's true to me? Like, have I just been selling rooms, or is there more to my brand? And then other clients realize that, oh yeah, actually I'm super purpose driven. I've got a lot of substance, and I'm more than just real estate. So yeah, I mean, like our clients are doing really zany and interesting things. Zoom conferences with capybaras, which is like the world's largest mammal. You can buy that experience from the Singapore Zoo. It's fantastic. I mean, like, I'd much rather get on a call with a giant mammal than with like a bunch of people in suits. That's more fun than in this time especially. That's more fun than anything else. And I think even with the banyan tree at the moment, I've bought a whole bunch of things in the future because I believe we're going to get out of this. But people buying gifts and people buying rooms, and I'm sure people buying tickets to Niseko next year already because they believe we're going to get out of this, and I think that stems from just us being quite optimistic about where the world is going, and we want it to open, and we want to feel snow and sand and things.
Yeah, one of our clients is IKEA. And I think what's been so encouraging is we've realized how much skill and talent we sit on, right? And I think that there's always kind of a default to reach straight out to a production company to go and produce something. And I think what we found is, we sit on I've learned and discovered so many things about our creative department, that people have these amazing skills that I never knew. And we did a film for IKEA. So IKEA, the brand line is Make Home Count. And, when we started to go into the first circuit breaker, there was never a more perfect time, right, to play that brand message and for them to be relevant in that time. And so we shot a film with everyone in the agency. We got everyone to shoot themselves at home doing stuff that they were doing, how they were making home count, how they're making working home from count. And it was, it was just really inspiring for me to see that we could take something and just create it ourselves in the agency, and within a week have it online and engaging people. And that was just really, really encouraging and really inspiring, that we have all that talent, we can create something, we're put in this unique situation where we have to react really fast. And I think out of that comes great creativity sometimes, right, with all these constraints.
Yeah, I have a slightly different spin on it, but kind of like along the same vein. For years, the hotels are never great, innovators. They never lead any great creativity on that front. And for years, I've been telling my hotels and the marketing directors there that we have all the resources. We don't have to be that passive, but it's really hard to change the mindset. I said, we're the ones with the chefs. We're the ones with the bartenders. We're the ones with like the suites. We have everything here in our hotels. And what a lot of our hotels do is it's still very passive. They wait for the media to come, for the food promotion and all that, or the new asparagus, tofu, Thai dinner that they're going to promote. And I said, well, the thing is that, this is 2020. We can have our own media sources and media platforms right now. The media is still important, and they have the reach and the distribution, but we can still start playing now with it. We can come up with our own authentic content, like everyone talks about. And we have everything right there in our hotel. So let's do it. And I think, unfortunately, it took the pandemic for them to kind of really realize that we do have all this talent, as Andy, you were saying, and that we can do all these all these wonderful creative content. And Hong Kong was never in a lockdown. I'm in Hong Kong, by the way. So it was never really in a lockdown per se. I think only basically schools were closed, but everybody's just still walking around. There's restaurants, there's malls and everything. So even though the media could come to our hotels in Hong Kong, but they couldn't in China and in North America. But we can go to our own hotels and do things in there. So I think in the last 3 months, and I think it all culminated in the live stream that we just had, we found that we were way more resourceful and creative than we thought we were. So, and unfortunately, it took a pandemic for us to kind of realize that collectively.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, lots of time actually we could tap into internally. And one thing I found rather interesting over the course of the past few months was that very often when we work in marketing, the first thing we have to think of is who are our customers? What are they going through? What's crossing their minds? How are they feeling now? But the thing with COVID-19 is that we are all going through this together. We are all experiencing the same pain, the inconvenience, missing a lot of things that we have taken for granted and come to realize that it's actually something that's so important to us. It matters, travel being one. So one thing that came out was that we didn't really have to really struggle so hard to think of how customers or how people are feeling, because we are experiencing that ourselves. So when we brainstorm for ideas every week, and which we're doing now actually, we're doing everything in-house. We do brainstorming session every week and say, okay, for our next social post, what are we going to do? And we have much more ideas because we are experiencing exactly what everyone else is experiencing. So we are saying that, okay, why don't we see many people have this really wanderlust, wanting to travel again. So why don't we write up all our wishes and put it on a wall of a shrine, which is what we do here in Japan. It says we write in these wooden plaques of our wishes and hang them on the shrines in Japan. So we do that, put it on social, and we shared it with everyone. So I think one thing that we came to really realize and learn is really to be in the shoes of our customers and to really think as how they would think. And I think this was really a very good exercise for us all.
Yeah, I've seen some of the social stuff, and my team especially worked very closely with your team, Akira, in trying to help you navigate through that. It was a really great experience. It brings me to the next thing I wanted to discuss was the KPIs that our marketing budgets are expected now to achieve. I think all of us working in travel, a lot of it typically has come down to how many rooms have you booked, how many flights have you booked, how many tables have you booked in for my restaurant? And COVID-19 really asked us to adjust that because in the immediate term, it's an impossibility. A lot of us can't actually book a flight right now or book a hotel stay or even go to a restaurant. So I think, Akira, I think it might let you lead off, but have it to discuss what are how do we gauge our marketing success with some of the different messaging if conversions isn't one of them? Or can't be one of them.
Yes, you're absolutely right. I mean, for us especially, for international flights, for example, we had to close down over 90% of our flights. So there's very little work for marketing to do. And even when we want to try to justify budget for running campaigns, they would say, well, we don't have to do much marketing now because it's really very, very quiet. So we had to think immediately of, well, how do we measure what goals do we want to set for this COVID-19 period? And one thing that came up almost right away was that, well, let's make sure that we continue to be engaged with our fans and our followers. So social became sort of more the focal point of what we need to focus on. So our KPIs were really more on generating positive sentiments. And we benchmark that with social listening to make sure that we get connected with our customers. A second thing, KPI that we launched, and this is, I think, more airline specific, is because we understand that many people are going through a lot of pain points, having their flights cancelled. So the second thing is to make sure that all these pain points, all these hassle, all these problems that people are facing, that we try to eliminate them and reduce a lot of pain points. So my second KPI was making sure that looking at our customer comments, that we fix problems quickly. And in many sense, I think these negative comments were very helpful because it's not business as usual. It's a very unusual situation. So it was actually very helpful to us to actually hear what customers are complaining about so that we can resolve and fix these problems without delay. So that was actually something that we thought was actually very helpful. And another KPI that our top management actually gave us was that, well, guys, since we have to work through Steam, I'm sure there are lots of things that you guys have wanted to do over the years but have not been able to, such as upgrading your skills, learning something new. So utilize this time and write out what you want to accomplish by the end of 3 months. So we started sending out notice asking people, okay, we have this time now. Yes, there's work to be done, but apart from that, how do you want to improve the skills and work on projects that you haven't been able to in the past? So we have actually kicked off a couple of new projects in terms of upgrading a lot of our capabilities that have always been in my mind. I've not been able to do so because of budget and because of work pressure. But now that we have the time and resource, we were able to do that. Another thing that we did was that it's a huge human resource exercise as well, whereby a lot of our, for example, flight cabin attendants only have to fly maybe once a week, so they have a lot of time. And in Japan, we try to retain employment as much as we can. So the thing that came to me was how can we utilize our cabin crew. So we've brought in actually cabin crew to my department in marketing and did workshops in trying to, and this is something that I've wanted to do for a long time, is try to really work out why is Japanese hospitality so special? What is omotenashi? A lot of sort of hardware stuff in terms of in-flight seats, lounges, meals, IFE entertainment, all that stuff is easy to deal with. But it's these sort of intangible things that's all very hard to explicitly express. So I'm working on a project with our cabin crew team now to try to turn these tacit knowledge into explicit knowledge so that I can then share with everyone else who wants to know how does Japanese omotenashi work. So that's something that is also part of my new KPI.
Vivian, yeah, I mean, the hotel rooms are tougher things to try and gauge right now. How about yourself?
Yeah. You know, the word of the day in the hotel industry, it's a terrible word, but you know, it's out there. It's staycations, because it's all about domestic travel. Here in Hong Kong, it's a huge thing now. There have been families have been kind of cooped up as well. It's not quite a lockdown per se, but still they and of course, you know, Hong Kong is more dense and the living quarters are smaller. So staycations are a huge thing. Our borders are still closed with mainland China and with Macau. But you know, 8 million people in Hong Kong alone, you know, it's kind of still quite a bit of business to go around. And there's like wonderful deals going on right now, not just at the Langham, but, you know, hotels like the Peninsula and the Shangri-La and so on and so forth. One of the things, and this is not pertaining just to Langham, but since you're talking about marketing, in Hong Kong, and I don't think any other country has done this or any other city's done this, the legacy luxury hotel brands in Hong Kong have gotten together, and it's kind of like a seismic thing. So it's like the Rose with the Peninsula, Shangri-La, Mandarin Oriental, the Langham, and come together to just kind of form a marketing entity and with Cathay Pacific. And so they're just kind of like working hand in hand to really get the publicity out, like so that when the borders are open, that, it's safe to come back and wonderful attractions, wonderful deals to be had. And I think, again, it took the pandemic to do that because, on a regular day, we're all competitors and we won't ever do anything like this. But these are unusual times. So it's kind of interesting. I'm not sure if other companies or other cities are going to do that. I hear this made kind of a bit of a splash on the international news. And then I was looking at the comments. It says, maybe we should do something like that. So other tourism bureaus. So if it catches on, I think this will be kind of like a really interesting new development moving forward in marketing.
Yeah, just a quick comment on that. I absolutely agree. It's not just even marketing. I think it's the whole travel ecosystem, because the problems that we have now, none of us can solve this single-handedly. We have to work collaboratively.
Exactly.
So aviation and airlines, we work as all airlines working together to find ways to resolve a lot of problems, to remove the concerns that people have when people think of travel. And we talk with a lot of hotels, with a lot of destination tourism boards, just to think of how can we get tourism back on its feet. So we may have a lot to chat about after this
I
conference.
think so. No, honestly, yes. So airlines, yes, if your hotels are open and the borders are not, and then there's travel restrictions. Nobody wants to do a double quarantine, right? I have family in Singapore. I don't want to have to go to 2-week quarantine there and then come back in another 2 weeks quarantine, and that's just crazy. So, yeah, and then there's the tourism boards, there's the shops, there's the retailers, and everybody's affected by it. So, it just really kind of like opened things up that it's not just about me anymore and my company and my hotel, but I definitely got to find more ways to work together.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was just going to say, I thought you were going to say the dreaded word was experiences. And I feel like that's the phase, right? It's like at first it's experiences and then it's staycations and then you get the real thing. But we saw
same but different, yeah.
Yeah, I think in Singapore we definitely saw like there's a lot of banding together happening. Restaurants, the F&B sector's been hit really, really hard, and a lot of talk about a lot of awareness raised around like more fundamental issues like just landlords and price control and rents and things like that. But then I think the tourism industry is also banding together in Singapore, because we're so dependent on it. Singapore's such a small country, and we love our quickie getaways to, Bali or to Thailand. So yeah, I think just to answer the original question, I think KPIs have shifted, right? I feel like if you were selling back to what and why and how, I think if you were selling a room, then now it's becoming something else. There's still a desire to sell something or to sell something that's useful and does good and has positive impact. And if it can't be the thing you used to sell before COVID, then what is that new thing? That will bring joy and that will be useful and will do good. So I think broadly, all brands are figuring that out or have figured it out already. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like what Kira was saying, because we're all in this together as a cliche, but honestly we are, because we're travelers and we visit other countries and we're tourists as well. And so, this is also a bit of a marketing thing. Before with hotels, it was, yes, the latest asparagus promotion you got to trot out. But now, I'm in like privy to some of the committees that's going on in my hotel company, and they're really interesting. It was like for rooms operations, for example, mini bar. Should we still have them? Should we not have them? But then before you talk about should we or should we not, you got to talk about the mindset of the guests. Will the guests be fearful about dining in a restaurant where there's other people? Because for years there've been talk about the death of the minibar. But now maybe we should stock up the minibar and just go the other way and put like make it almost like a prep fridge, all the sandwiches and salads that you want in there, so that you don't have to talk to anybody and don't have to see anybody. And these are the things that we just have to like figure out, and it's just all human psychology, insights, and it's just the new normal. I mean, and it sounds kind of incredible, but remember, like pre 9/11, when going to the airport was just like, I'm just going to the airport, I'm going to go over there, and I can even go all the way to the window and just kind of like wave at people, and my family going off. And now it's like belts off, laptops off, shoes off, and the liquids come out, and then we don't even bat an eyelid. There's the whole 3-hour, 2-hour nonsense before we go to the airport. And so what is the new normal now? And so again, I think before we get into all the talk about the marketing, we have to think about, gosh, what will people do and want to do, and what will they put up with also when they travel? And for us here in the hotel industry, it's still very new to us, and we're still in the process of just processing it and seeing how we can deliver.
Yeah, I think there's huge expectation as to what the new normal is going to look like, because we talk so much about this, but yet we don't have a very clear idea as to what would emerge after COVID-19. But I think there are high expectations, especially in the travel sector, that something exciting, something new would come out that would inspire us, that would give us something to look forward to and hope for. And I think it's for us to really put on our marketing hats and come up with some new ideas.
I mean, speaking of marketing hats, my next kind of point's directed at the man in the hat, our man Andy. I mean, where times have been so tough, creativity in general is such an emotional thing. It's not something that you just wake up and you're in the mood for. Being creative when you're inundated with such negativity and such pressure to align with certain messaging. And in your experience, Andy, and some of our other creative agency leads, how do you continue to foster that creativity amongst your teams, but then also articulated that to your own clients to get them to buy into that creativity as well, especially during really tough times like right now?
I mean, I think there's been so much to be inspired by, right? Like, I think, as we've said, there's so many great examples of people coming together. There's great examples of amazing pivots where brands have pivoted and done something or changed behavior. And I think, for me, watching what culture's done, because culture, I think, is always such a great driver of this, and seeing, I was so inspired when I saw SNL do their first live episode from home. And I thought that was just such an incredible show of the show must go on, plus just getting really creative and using Zoom to do sketches, and how they took that medium and technology and got very, very creative around it. I thought was incredibly inspiring. So I think there's still lots of amazing examples of when we're pushed and we're put in these kind of positions, how we step up creatively. And sometimes the constraints actually can be the most creative thing to force you to be really, really creative in a situation. I mean, I loved what Sentosa did with Animal Crossing. I thought that was an incredible example of being able to, keep the brand relevant, being able to allow people to have that experience, but in a virtual place. I thought that was really, really inspiring. There's still a lot. I think we're learning so much, and I think being curious and watching and observing and listening. There's a lot. There's a lot to be inspired by, for sure. What's everyone else inspired by?
Go ahead, Janice.
So I think in some ways, for my team, I think it's been a more inspiring period than usual. I think it really is that also the whole sense of adversity and people coming up with things, we're water over rocks, I think it's so, that's never been more apparent. People will find a way through and around and over and under, and I think that's been really, we've been really inspired by our clients because they've been so resilient, which has helped us then be more resilient and then want to help them and then come up with more and more creative ideas. And I actually think for us as an agency, the ideas have been flowing much faster, and with more immediacy and with more intent. I think that's the other thing, is that because everyone wants to band together, even as a country, I think, Australia's been quite lucky. Australians have felt very lucky. So Australians have really wanted to support their country and support local, we just come out of bushfires. So there was already this sentiment there of how do we get creative to help ourselves? How do we, foster this kind of local love and the love of our country that had sort of been lost a little bit in the last few years. And I think that's, we were just coming out of those bushfires and the rebuild and came straight into this. And I think it's banded a lot of people together. Everyone was talking before about industries coming together and communities coming together and the sharing of ideas. And I think in this country, certainly that's been, that's manifested quite creatively. We do work with Tourism Australia, and I think they've, campaigns that they would usually take months or years to come up with have just had to flow much faster. And everyone's got an idea because there's a shared experience and a shared result everyone wants, which is to turn the economy back on, to get people back in jobs, to get it all moving. And so I think that's created a lot of inspiration. In some ways, I'm kind of dreading that new normal phase, because I feel that, I hope that some of this way of working that we've learned, that's been much, much faster and more collaborative, might slowly fade. And I hope that's not the case, but I feel like people lift in adversity, and that extends to creativity too.
And speed has been
really good.
Right.
Sorry.
I think we've been able to create at such speed. And I think for me, like the creative department live to create, right? So as creative people, we have to create. And when we create, we're happy. And I think that, when we first went into Circuit Breaker, we were unbelievably busy. There was so much going on. And we were creating, we were making. I think we were putting stuff out every single week for our clients. And that was hugely inspiring to the creators, because they're getting to realize this work. We're getting to see it. We're getting to see people interact with it. On the first day of Circuit Breaker, we did a social post for STB, Singapore Tourism Board, where we took the Merlion away, because the Merlion was working from home as well. And that was just fun and a great way to kind of show solidarity, that we're all in this together, and we're starting the Circuit Breaker. We don't know what it's going to be like, because it was a whole new space. So yeah, creating has been, and I agree. I think that's one of the things that I really hope we continue, is that we continue to create at speed, and we continue to be really relevant, because that's the other thing I think has been such a key thing, is that because we're creating so fast, we're being hyper relevant. So we're reacting to stuff that's happening, and the brands are relevant, and they're relevant to consumers, and putting stuff out that really resonates and connects with people. So that's I think a great thing that's come out of it, for sure.
So true.
I think everyone has become more creative, because creativity comes from stimulation that we get from our environment. And because our environment has changed so substantially that we have a lot of new ideas. We ask questions. Why is this? Why can't I? How is this such and such? So I think there are a lot of new creative ideas, because our environment has changed so much that it prompts us to think of something new. So we came up with ideas like, if everyone is working from home and not exercising, why can't we create a mileage program that encourages people to exercise? So if you walk for a certain distance, we give you miles. You can collect miles just by walking. So we'll be launching that pretty soon.
That's great.
That's great. That's really great. Just echoing everyone, I think we're the world's the most creative it will ever be. In my in my lifetime, I think we're leading very examined lives, more examined. Than we're reading again. I'm reading again. We're asking why at everything. We're conscious of everything. We're conscious of what we're eating. We're conscious of like what we're putting out there, and it's never been like that before. I'm a big believer that the music was a lot better in the 70s and 80s, and the reason for that was because there was music and art. There was kind of there was adversity in the past, and I don't think we know any of that now. I don't, at least, and I think when you're put through adversity, then creativity can really flourish. You can really get creative. You can really start writing a novel, writing a really nice song, putting out a good film. I can't wait for the movies that will come out after this is all over. I'm sure Spike Jonze is doing something awesome somewhere. I'm sure Michael Bay will be better now. I don't know. I'm sure the movies and the art and the music will be so much better in the years to come.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone saw John Krasinski's Some Good News on YouTube. I thought that was really incredible, right? I mean, it's an idea that I've sat on for years, wanting to do a media channel that's just about good news. I think the world needs it. It's so much, and I thought that was so incredible. I mean, he had the idea, he put it up on YouTube, and I think a month later, Viacom bought it from him, which is so, I think, inspiring to everyone. Naomi Campbell did a YouTube show. I think she'd always wanted to do a TV show or a chat show, and she just did it. She just put it up on YouTube, and then obviously she's got incredible reach, and she's got incredible platform and people that she could get onto it. But I think those kind of acts have been hugely inspiring. It's the time to just to get out and do and create and anything you've been wanting to do. Yeah,
it's a good time to sort of reset many things, because when we say new normal, I think we can put up a lot of agendas that we've always wanted to see happen but have not quite happened. Things like sustainability, environment, diversity, income disparity, and all these things that we wish to see in the new normal are things that I think will happen, and at least it would prompt people to act and not just sit back. So I think looking forward to see some positive changes as well.
I mean, on that really positive note, I might put a wrap there. I know some of us need to get to sleep in the case of Vivian. I personally have a Zoom call with a capybara, so I should get to that. So thank you again, everyone, so much for your time, for your creativity, for your innovation. I'm hoping that, I know I am, but I hope everyone who's watching and listened in today are really inspired and motivated to take marketing forward and innovate into the future. So I might just wrap it up here. Next week on Tripadvisor Talk, we're working with Jun Kiat to talk about some of our experiences and attractions and how they're dealing with the pandemic. So tune in for that next week, but I might leave that. So thank you very much to everyone, and we'll all be in touch. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.